Hey there folks, today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about Serpa Holsters. Now, these have come back up in the news recently, especially with some of the newer videos coming out of P320s going off in holsters. I've seen this holster get blamed a little unfairly, in my opinion, for some indies, and also been given a lot of excuses by people that don't understand what makes them dangerous. So I'm going to try to clear that up in as quick of a video as I can. So the idea behind this holster is when you get a full grip, you lay your finger across this little paddle here, depress it, and draw. That gets the gun out of the holster. When it's not depressed, the gun is stuck in the holster. And I want to point out, these are all cleared. I cleared them before this video twice. The problem comes in with this ridge here. There's a crescent-shaped ridge here. I'm not entirely sure what the point of that is. It only serves to make the holster more dangerous, in my opinion. But the problem comes in when you don't try to lay your finger across it like this and instead depress the button with a curled finger. Now, when you depress the button with the curled finger, your finger, as you're drawing, wants to naturally slide downwards on the holster and come over this ridge. When you hit this ridge, your finger jumps, as you can see. So as you're coming out of the holster, especially when you're a little tired or you've been training all day, you've forgotten that you have to not be stupid, you depress this button with your index finger here and you pull over and oops. Let's do that again a little faster. And you've shot yourself. So I can hear what you're going to comment. Don't do that. Lay your finger across like you're supposed to. Draw the gun. Finger out like that. And yes, that is the correct way to use a holster. Every holster, you should be laying your finger across, straight across the slide like that. However, I say personally, my take on it is it's a little bit like those weird three-wheelers that you used to see running around in the 80s. Those were banned because they were inherently dangerous. Even though you can drive them, they are more dangerous to drive than a four-wheeler. So, this is kind of the same way. Even though you can use this safely, it is inherently more dangerous than something like a Safariland ALS, GLS, or SLS. For example, I've got a Glock 34 SLS ALS holster here. And for this holster, you have to depress this button and pull outwards. And it is correct to keep your finger across this little rolled ridge here. And that kind of keeps your finger up against the slide. However, on this holster, if you were to curl your finger, which honestly is kind of awkward to do because you don't get a full grip when you're curling your finger like that. But even if you were to curl your finger and draw, your finger is not thrown downwards. Even if you draw towards the rear, your finger is not thrown downwards into the trigger guard. Now, you can force yourself to draw wrong with this holster by holding down here and curling your finger, and you will end up in the trigger guard. But if you were to mess up and draw like this, you are not very likely to shoot yourself in the leg. Don't do that. Run your finger straight on all holsters. What cannot be trained around is some inherent flaws with this design itself. On the back here, you've got a 3-screw setup, which is fine in theory. There's plenty of 3-screw setups out there. This is a Safariland QLS system. All of my holsters are set up on QLS systems like so. I have a lot of different attachment points for different belts. And in theory, that's fine. However, these are very flimsy. They're known to pop out. They're not really anchored into much at all, as you can see. And the actual mounts for them are extremely fragile. I have seen these come ripping off of belts from someone who was basically just fell in the ground on the ground. I've seen these holsters come flying off pretty frequently, actually. It's kind of disturbing seeing a Glock go skittering across the floor. Probably more concerning, though, you could, in theory, replace this with something else that's a little stronger. probably more concerning is there's an inherent design flaw with this. There's a large gap behind this button, the release lever here, if I can get it to focus. Pretty large gap. I have seen people get down on the ground and try to shoot undercover with like their carbines or whatever, shoot underneath a car or whatever, and catch a little bitty pebble right in this slot behind the little trigger release, just like so. And when that happens, there's no getting this gun out. You have to take a Dremel with a cutting wheel and cut right across here. And that will help you get it back out. In my opinion, that completely keeps me from wanting to ever carry with one of these. If I know that getting a little rock somewhere in this holster could cause it to malfunction and lock my gun in there until I can find a Dremel, I don't want it. There is no way for that to happen on a Safariland ALS. There's nothing in there for a rock to get hung inside of at all. So that's nice. Not only that, but that part of the gun is actually pretty well protected from the outside by the rest of the holster. Same thing with the Safariland SLS. There's absolutely nowhere for material to get in on this track here. If it did, it's very minor debris that you could force the gun out of. That is something you really can't train around. You cannot expect to go shoot a gun, get dirty, and not have something get inside your holster. I've had brass get down at the bottom of this holster and had to take my holster off and shake it out to get the brass out. That's part of the reason why I got a QLS system. All of that is to say that, not to say that this is the only dangerous holster out there. There's plenty of dangerous holsters. This is by far the most popular dangerous holster in my opinion, but even old worn out holsters can be pretty bad. This, for example, is a Bianchi M12. This is a military surplus holster for the Beretta M9, and you'll notice I do not have a Beretta M9 in it. I have a HK USP, and there's a good reason for that. At some point in this holster's life, whoever had it before me has stretched this holster to the absolute limit of what it is capable of, and I'm not willing to replace this top cover. I would rather just buy a new holster. But when the Beretta M9, which has been cleared by the way, when the Beretta M9 is in this holster without the safety on, as you can see, it's very loosely fitted. It could actually shake free pretty easily, but it has stretched out so much over the years, probably from someone doing something like a USP or, oh, who knows, it could be like a Ruger P95 or something, but the holster is stretched so much that you can actually feasibly get something in here, and the top cover here is not even protecting the hammer. So this holster is completely unsafe to carry in for a Beretta M9, especially with the safety off like that. On a USP, it's pretty much perfectly fine. It's actually even a little tight for the USP, and there's no way to get your finger in there. It is pulled tight, and even if you did manage to force it open, pulling the trigger will not fire because the top cover is actually catching the hammer. So I do think there is some unfairness treated to the Serpa holster, but not without reason. It is a truly bad holster in my opinion. However, the reason this video is being made is I've seen a few P320s going off in holsters, and what is being blamed is Serpa or like Serpa adjacent designs from people who don't understand why these were causing negligent discharges. They think, oh, Serpas cause negligent discharges, so when P320 goes off in holster, that means it's Serpa fault. That is not how the Serpa works. There's nothing in here to pull the trigger, as you can see. The only thing in here is a little tab that hangs right on the front of your trigger guard, like so. That is all there is to that. It does not matter how hard you, and this is cocked and empty, It does not matter how hard you shove this in. It does not touch this trigger, as you can see. It is only locking in to the trigger guard. So, that is not how Serpas work. P320s are not going off in holsters because they're hitting this tab or whatever with the trigger. That's not how they work. What is happening, I'm not sure. Couldn't tell you. However, if you ever see someone shoot with one of these on the draw, that could potentially be the holster's fault. This is not a video to defend the Serpa holster. I think this is possibly the worst holster I own, except I do have one that is potentially worse. And it is this holster here, which is frankly quite awful. However, what I use this for is I tie this to a bed, not a bed frame, but a lamp in my room. And this kind of just sits there next to the bed. And if I want to use it, I snatch it off. That's my one use case for this. I would never carry with this. It doesn't protect the whole gun. It doesn't keep the gun centered. But for that purpose that I use it for, it works pretty good for me. And like I said, the only culprit there is this little crescent moon cut here that kind of just launches your finger into the trigger guard. Anyway, I hope that clears up why people don't like these holsters, why they're banned in so many places, why they're being replaced in duty use with Safari Lands and U.S. duty gear holsters. If you disagree with me, feel free to leave a comment saying why. I will read it. However, I will probably call you a dummy, you know, as I do. Thanks for watching. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video when I have something way more interesting to talk about.